We're live. And I will hit the record button as we allow everyone to settle in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Africa Share and Discuss webinar series. It's a pleasure to have you connect with us, and we hope the conversation today will be as interesting as, of course, we promise and we are able to deliver every week. My name is Shola Olateju, and I'm not alone. Zach, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Yes, thank you, Shola, and thank you, our guest today. I'm really excited to be here and for everyone joining. I'm looking forward to a very exciting session. Thank you.
Awesome. Just a second while I pull up the slide, and we will be on our way. So today we have an interesting conversation, and of course we have an amazing speaker as well to share experience around the topic, so we cannot wait to get started. We'll also love to know you, so please feel free to write in the chat your name, perhaps the subject you teach or where you're joining us from. Your name, the country or city where you're based, the subject you teach, anything to just let us know a bit more about you as we get started. Okay. Sorry, just a second. Tech has been very pleasant today, so please bear with me. Thank you. I see a couple of people are dropping in their chat already. So great. You should see my screen just about now. Awesome. Zach, can you please confirm you see my screen?
It's loading. Yeah, it's up now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your patience. Again, welcome to this edition of the Africa Share and Discuss webinar series. It's a pleasure to have you connect with us this June, and we look forward to an engaging and insightful conversation. As you already know, we meet every third Wednesday of the month to bring in together educators, researchers, and practitioners from around the continent to share insights into how they are using PhET in their own context, and we can learn from their experience. And just before we get started, it's important to also introduce or say a little thing about PhET while we're here today. The PhET Interactive Simulation Project is a project at the University of Colorado Boulder that creates free interactive math and science simulation. The sim are based on extensive education research and engage students through an intuitive game-like environment where students learn through exploration and discovery. The project was founded in 2002 by the Nobel laureate Carl Wyman. Our goal is to improve the global learning of math and science, and this is one of the many expressions through which we do that. The goal is to shift practices, helping to bring evidence into our everyday practices in classrooms. So we meet, and this is what the time looks like. Every third Wednesday at this hour, your time, we are always here bringing you amazing conversations and seasoned speakers from across the continent. This session is recorded, like you know, so you can catch up on this session as well as past recordings on the playlist on YouTube. So please feel free to visit YouTube and search for PhET Interactive Sims, and you can see this lineup of the current session as well as past sessions. Feel free to share widely with your network also. For housekeeping rule, and before we introduce the speaker, please, as become customary, when the speaker is presenting, we will not be taking your questions, but we encourage that you please drop your questions in the chat or using the question and answer feature here in Zoom. Drop your questions there after our speaker today has shared. Then we will open up the floor to allow everyone share. So we've saved enough time towards the end for everyone to share. Again, use the question and answer feature or just drop it in the chat, and myself and Zach will be looking out for your questions. Also, these conversations never end here. An hour really comes by really fast. So we encourage you to join the community on Facebook, which is the PhET Educator Community for Africa, where you can connect with other users of PhET, but most importantly, be up to date in terms of announcements, events, but also support. You can connect with members of the team as well as other speakers who are also within the community to get support or connect with other members within your region or country. So without further ado, so I don't hold us up a lot longer, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for today, Lilian Nyaranga. Lilian is the founder of the Ilimo Shop, which creates innovative and engaging resources that make STEM learning interactive, fun, and motivating for learners. Of course, she's a science and gamified game-based learning champion. She has a background in math. She's a math and chemistry major and has gone on to do a curriculum development. And of course, in her professional life as well, worked as a curriculum designer, designing both education project as well as curriculum for math and science. So we have the pleasure of having her on the session today to share from our wealth of experience about how we can, of course, leverage play-based learning in achieving our outcomes and making learning fun and engaging for our learners in our various contexts. Thank you, Lilian, for joining us today. So I'll hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sola and Batu, for inviting me to be a speaker in this great forum. It's such an honor, and I'm humbled. And I'm hoping that we'll have an interactive session where we learn from each other. So just like you've introduced me, I'm Lilian Nyaranga. I wear many hats. I'm a passionate STEM educator, author, learning designer, and an educational game creator. So I think I'll share my slide at this point. So my passion for making the learning of math and science is what led me to found a Ilimo Shop. And our mission is to transform the way math and science are taught in schools, using innovation to create engaging experiences. We normally do this by developing innovative teaching and learning resources that are aimed at making these subjects engaging. Our focus is on game-based learning because we believe that games are powerful tools that can spark curiosity, boost engagement, and make the learning process truly enjoyable for all students. We've created so many resources, which are both physical and digital, but our flagship math board game called Equation Explorer is now revolutionizing the way math is taught in schools, and that's really exciting for us to see. So in my line of work, I've also worked closely with PhET to support teachers to seamlessly integrate PhET simulations into their learning process. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be here and to be sharing on this topic, which is so, which I'm very passionate about. And I hope that by the end of the session, we'll all have learned one or two things about games in the learning process. So I want us to start with a small just reflection. You can just share on the chat. And then if time allows, like it was mentioned, we can sample a few of your reflections. So I just want you to think about a time in your childhood. Did you enjoy playing games? What aspects of games did you enjoy the most? I want you to just take time, think about this, and then you can share on the chat. It will be interesting to see your thoughts around this area. And also, as you're doing that, I'd also want you to think about, sorry. Yeah, as you're doing that, I also want you to think about games in the educational space. Do you think games are useful in the teaching of subjects, especially science and math? Why not? Yeah, so I'll just give you a minute to just think and reflect, and then share on the chat before we move on. Okay. Why it's not, my slide is not moving.
Do you want to stop sharing and then try to share again?
Yeah, let me just stop and then I share again.
Yeah, sure. So while you're doing that, I'll just read out some of the responses you're getting. So I enjoyed the competition aspect of playing games with my friend, especially when I win. Mohun says, play that were interactive and a dose of competition, time-bound and counting involved. Beth is saying, I find that it relaxes my learners. They learn, they laugh and have fun. Marihan, hi Marihan. Yes, love the competition challenge, fun and interacting with others. That makes learning fun. That's from Atia Abdelkader. Yeah, but there are a whole lot more to read, but I'll hand it over to you now.
Awesome. Those are really awesome sharing that, insights that you've given, and it will really build on to what we are about to look at today. So in our session today, we'll be looking at getting a better understanding of what we mean by game-based learning, and then look at its benefits in the learning process. And then after that, we want to see how can we explore this knowledge that we've gained about game-based learning to leverage the PhET simulation mechanics that are there to make our learning more engaging and interactive. So the objective of our session is to explore the principles of game-based learning, look at some of the benefits based on evidence that has been given. We also want to look at discover potential of PhET simulation for gamified learning, and then finally look at some strategies that you can use to design game-based learning activities using the PhET simulation. But first, what is game-based learning? So this is an area that is emerging, especially in Africa, but it's an area of study that is gaining a lot of interest in the education space. Generally, when you're talking about game-based learning, we are talking about use of games in the learning environment, and these games are aligned to specific learning outcomes that are aimed at developing skills and knowledge in a given subject. So key things here is that when you're talking about game-based learning, we are talking about games that are educational. Here, it's important for us to know that not all games are educational. So for game-based learning, you're talking about games that are educational. These games must be aligned to a specific learning outcomes and that are aimed at developing a given knowledge and skills in a particular subject. So if you are to use an illustration, I've used the concept of gear. In the first gear, we have the curriculum, which the learning usually is around. And from this curriculum, we gain the learning objectives. What skills and knowledge do we want our students to gain so that they can gain the math concepts and the science facts? And then on the other side, we want to include now the engagement aspect of the learning process. So here is where now our games come in. And we have the game components like the game mechanics and the game elements. So for this session, I've just focused on this game, two game components, but we have several that you can think of. So for the game, and I'll be talking more about these two later as we move on in our webinar. So here we are looking at things like rules, points, feedback, levels, competition, badges. These elements that make the learning to be fun and exciting and competitive and make students engaged and be actively involved in the learning process. And also when you look at the illustration I've used, the gear for curriculum is bigger, and this is intentional because the curriculum should be the core. The game should not overshadow the curriculum. The purpose of the game, integrating the game into the learning, is so that it can reinforce the concepts that are being taught. So there's evidence to show that effective implementation of games in the classroom can benefit learning. And this is the studies that have been done that show actually it affects the overall effectiveness of the learning process. It can increase engagement in the learning process. Also, in terms of the knowledge retention, is increased if it's well implemented, and also it can develop key skills, like problem solving, critical thinking, and all that. So, with that said, it's important for us to realize that it's not automatic that when we use games in the classroom, it will lead to benefits in education. Effectiveness of the game depends on the quality of the game selected. It also depends on the preparedness of the teacher, the type of planning and organization, the effectiveness of the curriculum, of the lesson plan, also it depends on what types of feedback, what types of assessments that will be used to check for understanding. And also it depends on the nature of interactions by the students that takes place in the classroom. So it does not necessarily mean that it will be effective. You have to look at all these factors before implementing in the classroom. So the benefits for game-based learning include increased motivation and engagement, because games spark curiosity, just like some of you have shared on the chat. They spark curiosity and keep students actively engaged in the learning process. And because of this increased motivation and engagement, students are able to improve knowledge retention for a long time. Games also, if well implemented, can develop key skills like problem solving skills and also critical thinking skills, because they challenge students to think critically, solve problems. They encourage them to analyze situations and evaluate information before they make decisions. Also, looking at the nature of the games, most of them normally require a lot of teamwork, players learning from each other, and this actually fosters collaboration and develops communication skills among students. All these are important in the learning process. So we see that games actually makes learning engagement. So what are these aspects of games that make the learning, the games to be engaging? So we had looked at the components. Like I said, we have different factors that make game engaging, but because of time, for this session, I'll just focus on two, the game mechanics. So the game mechanics are actually like the rules and the procedures, that dictate on how the game will be played. So you can look at it in terms of what actions will someone take and what will be the consequences of those actions, or what will be the result of those actions. So for game mechanics, we are looking at how players navigate the game, how players score points, how players move from one level to the next, and how the game ends. And then on the other hand, we have the game elements. So for game elements, you can look at it in terms of they're the tangible components that make up the game elements and make it to be fun and engaging. You can look at it as the one that provides the visual appeal of the game. So here we're looking at elements like points, rewards, characters, boards, interface, avatars, leaderboards, all those form game elements. And these two components are actually interrelated in that the mechanics allows players to interact with the elements to achieve a certain goal and to have fun while playing the game. So I know I've brushed through just an overview of what game-based learning is. Now we want to see, given this information, how can we use it when we are working with PhET simulations in our classrooms? And maybe before we look at that, I just want us to also think. I know most of us here are using PhET simulations in the classroom. So maybe share on the chat also what aspects of game-based learning have you seen in the PhET simulations, and do you use them in the classrooms? Yeah, just share on the chat. I'll just give you a few, just 1 minute before we move on. Just look at your, think about your, for those who've used PhET in the classroom, think about the mechanics of the simulations. Based on what I've just shared here, what game-based learning aspects have you seen in the PhET simulation? Yeah, so I hope we get time to just look at some of your thoughts on this towards the end. So we want to see how can we gamify PhET for a deeper engagement. Recently, I had the opportunity to observe 2 classrooms in a school that I support, where the teachers were implementing PhET simulations in the classroom. So in one of the classrooms, that was a math classroom, the teacher used the PhET simulations. And the other classroom, the teacher used the PhET simulations and also incorporated the inbuilt games that are in the PhET platform. So both lessons were, I could see increased engagement and interactions on the students, but it was obvious that the classroom where the teacher employed the use of games was the learners were more excited and motivated when these game elements were incorporated. So in the pictures I've shown there, the first class is the one that it was a math class where students were creating quadratic equation curves. And then in the second picture B shows a chemistry classroom where students were learning about atoms and elements in the periodic table. And then also you can see them playing games. You can just see the difference between the 2 pictures. So this actually shows the power of games to boost engagement and motivate, hence improve learning experiences in the classroom. So PhET simulations, not all of them have inbuilt games, but the strength in PhET lies in the interactive nature and the engaging mechanics that are in the platforms. This creates an opportunity for us as educators to design gamified learning experiences around these simulations. So by incorporating some of these game mechanics into these classrooms, it can boost the learning process and improve the learning experience of the students. So with this in mind, I wanted us to just explore two aspects of the PhET, one where there's an inbuilt game, and then another one where it does not have an inbuilt game, and just see how can we gamify, even PhET simulations where it does not necessarily have an inbuilt game in the sim. So looking at the first simulation. So this one was is the sim for balancing chemical equation. I screenshotted the game. So when you look at the interface, there are elements of the games that are shared about. We have the level. The importance of the level actually is levels normally give students a level of accomplishment. When I complete this level and then move to the next one, it also provides educators with opportunities to differentiate. Like you can give a particular activity for students who are struggling, and then maybe a higher level for students who are advanced. Also on the interface, you can see there's a timer, there's an audio, element, which are optional. You can click on them or decide to do without them. So when you click on that game, you'll see the game elements. We have the level there, that is level 1. We have the challenge. Here, the challenge for this game is they're supposed to do 5, to balance 5 equations for them to move to the next level. And then we have the points where there, and then we also have the timer. And then we also have the boxes there, and the game mechanics for this game is they manipulate the arrows up and down to balance the equation, and as they to balance the equation. So here, this is just showing an interface of a game that has already been played. This student balanced the equation correctly, and you can see there the score. The student has gotten 2 scores, and there's a smiley emoji that really encourages them, and you can see the change in the level. So this is just an example of a game that is in the PhET simulation platform. I know maybe some of you have used it directly in the classroom, but you can create a lesson plan around this and come up with gamified activities, like maybe a challenge. You can come up with, say, collaborative competition, and, just, or even an open-ended exploration, just to engage the students and make them enjoy the learning process. So so that is one of the simulation. The next one I want us, so here we are looking at the game mechanics. Involves manipulating the arrow to form to balance the equation, and then the feedback that is given, which includes the points and the smiley emoji. So what about games? The PhET simulations where they don't have maybe inbuilt games. What strategies can we think of to bring a gamified environment into the learning in the classroom? So the first thing that you need to do, of course, is to just come up with a clear objective of the lesson, define what knowledge and skills the students need to learn, and then align the knowledge and skills to the PhET simulation or the gamification activity that you want to take in the classroom. Like we said, the beauty of PhET simulation lies in the mechanics, the interactive mechanics that are there. It allows students to explore, discover, So encourage free manipulation of the tools on the platform. There are normally challenge levels in the platform, so teacher can design a mini challenge, within these challenges, problem solving, which can be done in groups or individually. And then also there's the advantage of immediate feedback when students use this mechanics. So these ones are already on the PhET, on the platform. And then you can think of incorporating maybe things which are not there, like come up with a point system, that will motivate the students and act as a simple assessment, if possible. And then also you can think of introducing a timer. Timers normally bring a sense of focus and urgency when students are playing. And then you can also think of bringing levels and progression so that it brings a sense of accomplishment. And also, like I said earlier, it's a good way of also differentiating lesson in the classroom. But it's important to know that a gamified activity can still be successful even without these elements. They're not, it's not a must that you include them. These are just optional. So what gamification activities can teachers think of? We have, like I mentioned earlier, challenge-based learning. So this can be either at an individual level or collaborative in groups. We can have collaborative competition where the teams compete for points or other rewards like badges. A teacher can just decide, come up with a point system that they'll use in the classroom. We can have even open-ended questions, using real-life situations and the simulation. And then just encourage maybe creative thinking, games around creative thinking. These are just examples of gamification activities that a teacher can think of to incorporate to bring that gamified environment into the classroom. So we can look at an example here, and maybe I can, if we have time, I can stop sharing this and we go just straight to the platform to look at this. Steam. So we have this one here. Number line operation. So when you look at the number line operation, it doesn't have an inbuilt game. So when you look at the interface, we have all these. Let me just move this one up. So we have this interface here, and we have different mechanics that have been inbuilt on this platform. So how can a teacher maybe use maybe such a theme to gamify the learning process? So those strategies that I mentioned earlier is what a teacher can think of including. So here, in terms of levels, we can use this to bring challenge, the idea of challenge, and even differentiation. Maybe for students who are struggling, use a smaller interval, -10 to 10, and then for advanced learners, they use a higher interval, of maybe -100 to 100. A teacher can decide to either do activities where students are adding 2 digits together, or maybe for them to move to the next level where they add, when they complete activities for the 2 digits, they move to the next level where they're doing activities for 3 digits being added together. So here, already what is in the platform is opportunity for students to manipulate the simulations and explore and experiment. There is the challenge and the opportunity for a teacher to introduce challenge into this activity, and also students are able to get immediate feedback, by manipulating the simulation. So maybe to go a step further, a teacher can decide to add game elements, like a point system, but this is optional, or maybe a timer, like you have a worksheet, you've created your activities on the worksheet, and then they're supposed to complete those activities in a given time, maybe for them to get these points. And then after that, they move to the next level. So there's the optional to include points, rewards, levels, and timers. But this is optional, like I said. The gamified activity can still be successful with or without the game elements. So once the teacher let me stop sharing this. Okay, once the teacher stops, incorporate those elements into the lesson plan. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we said, okay, you can just leverage all that, incorporate the game elements, which is optional. And then the gamification activities, now you can bring the idea of challenge-based learning, or collaborative competition, or solving of open-ended questions. So, for example, a challenge can be completing a set of questions within a given time, like I said. And then competition can be, they're competing maybe a given activities that have been provided on a worksheet for them to earn points and move to the next level. And open-ended problems can be, a teacher has created maybe a set of activities on a worksheet, like if Juma has 50 shillings and then gives Maria 80 shillings, use the manipulations to see the net outcome of that transaction. I know this in Kenya, there's a joke of Fuliza, meaning that if I have 50 shillings and then I give someone 80 shillings, obviously I've Fulized, but that's a Kenyan joke. Yeah, so that can be also an exciting open-ended problem that can be provided to students to make the learning more engaging. But when all is said and done, one thing that we need to note here is that integrating games into the learning process requires a lot of intentionality from the teacher. It requires proper planning and organization, because if these are not done, then it can even turn out to be chaotic. Also, something else that we need to note is that even though friendly competition can be motivating, the focus should be on learning of scientific and mathematical concepts and not just winning the game. Also, another important thing to note is that to make sure that the learning objectives are not overshadowed when students are playing the game. So the focus should be on using the simulations to explore and understand the key concepts. And then lastly, but most importantly, game-based learning is just one of the ways in which teachers can use to bring engagement and motivation into the learning process, but it's not supposed to replace the traditional instruction. Its work is just to supplement and also to reinforce the concepts that are learned. So using it, a teacher should be very strategic in employing it in the classroom. Thank you so much for listening to me. So I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Lilian, for the amazing presentation. Of course, you ended on a very great note. The game-based learning is just one strategy among the many. The way I say it is more, it should be one of the tools in the teacher's toolkit And then layering that on one of your points about the need to be intentional. And then, of course, because we see it as game and it can be engaging does not mean it should just be, students should be exposed at their discretion, or should just find their way. The same way we plan lessons is the way we need to be intentional about how we leverage and use both the game elements that are built in or the game-based learning approaches to get value out of our classes. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. And of course, a lot of people are have lots of good things to say in the chat as well. I'll just dive right into the question. I see Sam is raising his hand. Sam, please hold on a bit. We'll get to open the mic up a bit. If you have questions, please feel free to write in the chat now. You can drop them in the question and answer box here in Zoom, or you can raise your virtual hand as well. And once we're done reading from the ones that came through, then we'll get to open up the mic for you to just ask directly. So I'm going to ask a question that basically dovetails with, like, I think one of your last points. It is, sorry, I think it's not in the question and answer feature, so I have to look through the chat to pick it up. I was looking at it, but it got bumped up.
Yeah.
So this is from Wonderful. How do you consider the criticism of game-based learning as defined in the presentation as broccoli dipped in chocolate? So the whole idea is broccoli is bitter, but you now dip it in chocolate, just like it does not change the reality that learning is what it is. It takes effort, but if you put it in, if you add games, how do you manage that expectation? Like the games does not change the effort and the challenges students would have to navigate with learning, but then how, from your experience, can we balance this out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like giving an example of Fold It. Fold It is a game that was developed by the University of Washington to help students understand the protein structure. You know how the protein is formed in 3D dimension. So learning that concept is really complicated for the students. You know, it's very abstract. So the university came up with this game to enable the students be able to understand the abstractness of the topic. And this was very transformational in that through the development of that game, there have been some landmark research findings that have come out, including the identification of an AIDS gene that had eluded scientists for a long period of time. So what am I saying? I'm saying that when we introduce games into the learning process, of course, it will not take away the complex and the abstractness, you know, of the learning process. The hard work still needs to be there, but it helps students be able to understand some of this abstractness that can be there in the learning process. And also in terms of changing attitude, sometimes students tend to fear, you know, subjects like math and science because of attitude. When you change that attitude, it makes them now become more interested in the subject, and now that means that they put more effort in the learning process, you know, yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. Some questions are still coming in. I'll go to Alfred now. Alfred says, game-based learning versus gamification, what's the difference? I think that's more.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to that briefly?
Yeah. I'll also include the play-based learning. Yeah, because sometimes there's normally that confusion between the three. Play-based mostly targets the younger children in early childhood education, and it's normally unstructured. Game-based learning is more structured and aligned to the learning curriculum. Gamification is now introducing the element of games into an area which is not necessarily a game. For example, in class, just using a textbook to teach maybe calculus, and then I give students, I give students say scores, you know, for answering a question correctly. So that class is not necessarily a gamified class, but I'm introducing elements of games into that classroom.
Great. Thank you so much. Another question says, and this is coming from Mercy. Mercy says, of course, lots of great things to say, great presentation. At what point should we incorporate games to ensure we don't have winners and losers to keep learning motivated?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And like I'd said, a lot of intentionality and proper planning and organization is needed for the teachers. And also, when you're looking at games is actually a very wide area. There's a lot of psychology that is also involved in it. We have the intrinsic and the extrinsic motivators. Our focus should be more on ensuring that learners are intrinsically motivated and not focus so much on the extrinsic part of the game, which can be very short-lived, you know. So in terms of at what point should the games be introduced, that's up to the teacher to decide, you know, like, do you want to bring it at the beginning? Is it a review, or is it aimed at maybe introducing a topic, you know? So it's for them to think critically, the best time to introduce the game, and then what time, how much time should that game be allocated? Because that can also be a big issue. That's a big issue I've noted in most classes, the issue of time and introducing games into the classroom.
Okay, great. We'll come back. Please hold that thought. I'll open up the mic now for Sam, who has been raising his hand for a bit. Hello, Sam. The floor is yours now. You should be able to unmute and ask your question directly. Again, please feel free to drop or raise your virtual hand. You drop your question in the question and answer box here in Zoom, and we'll get to that in a bit. While we're waiting for Sam to unmute, I'll go on to the next question. So great to have you here, Crystal. I hope you joined early. I'll come back to that. If you have questions, please drop them, and we'll get to that in a bit. Thanks for joining us. I hope you find this insightful. Another question from Tabot. Have I read this? It's great. Yeah, I've read from Tabot. Sakinat is asking, can gamified learning process be merged into pedagogies? If yes, how will the teacher assess the learner's progress and challenges?
Yeah, that's like I've said, this is an emerging area in that's gaining a lot of interest in the learning, the education space. So the area of assessment, that's an area where we still have challenges. You know, like, how do you measure? How do you effectively check for understanding when you're using games in the learning process? How do you assess? Because not all engagements necessarily mean that learning is taking place, you know. So I agree, this is some of the areas where I'm also on my end, I'm also doing a lot of research around that area to see how best can games be assessed when they're used in the learning process. But in terms of integration into the system, like for instance, in Kenya, with the new curriculum, games are also part and parcel of the learning, the supplementary learning resources that teachers can use to supplement the learning that is taking place in the classroom. Yeah.
Okay, we still have some time for Sam. Are you able to speak now? If you can, please go ahead. Because of our time, I'm not sure we'll be able to take all the hands raised. Apologies for that. So if you are able to write, I would be sure to get to that. And if we have some time after reading all the questions, then I would open up the mic up again. I'm not sure Sam is ready, so we'll go ahead. Tabot is asking, great presentation. From the pictures you shared, it's easy for learners to individually engage in the challenge since the resources are available. How do you manage game-based learning in a one-screen, face-to-face classroom with respect to timing? I think you've spoken to this as well. So unless you have anything to add, I can go to the next question. You just answered something related to this not long ago. Setigen is asking, perhaps you meant both. Thank you, Lilian, for your presentation. Have you tried game-based learning in large class context? Similar question, like 45 students. If so, what challenges have you faced and how did you manage it? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, large classes. So like for PhET, we normally have the whole class presentation. Sometimes you just have to use, like if the resources are not enough, you can just use one game, but use it, like I said, this is something that a teacher needs to think critically beforehand, before coming to class, how best to use the little resources that are there to ensure that all students are learning. Because big classes can be a challenge if the resources are limited. And what I've experienced from my end is that normally if say you have few resources and so many students sharing the resource, many of the students are normally left out in the learning process. So a teacher really needs to think critically. You can have ideas like even having a rotational, them going rotational so that each and every student is able to access the resource.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we all agree that's a broader education challenge that we hope increasingly more people can that we can find solutions to, and increasingly we can bridge the gap or reduce the gap in terms of the digital divide that still exists and plague a lot of our schools. I think I've read Set again and I've read Tabot. So while we wait for other one, Sam, are you able to speak now?
Hello, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Sam, we hear you good.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank my sister for the presentation. It's quite rich, and also I just want to add or to emphasize that teachers can also use games as a formative assessment tool to gauge students' understanding in real life. You can incorporate them to add variety to the traditional teaching method. That way, it will be keeping lessons more dynamic and preventing monotony. Okay, games also can reduce test anxiety when you use a formative assessment, and it can make it less stressful way to students to demonstrate their knowledge. And they also enhance the atmosphere at the classroom atmosphere. And the games are generally they are quite motivating. This is one way of motivating learners. Even those that really interact with the content or participate in a class, in a normal setup, in a traditional setup, we find then that when you bring games, there's more energy amongst these learners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam, for your feedback. That's also the way to get people, students who typically are not active in class to increasingly, of course, increase engagement and get everyone actively involved. Crystal, go ahead, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I can attest to that. There's a class where game-based learning was integrated, and the most active people were these students who, under normal circumstances, never take part or never participate in the learning process. So it's true. It can make even students who are less engaged under normal circumstances to be more engaged in the learning. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to read your question in a bit. Everett Rester. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I know Crystal is joining us for the first time, so I'm bumping him up. Welcome, Crystal. The floor is yours. Okay, because of our time, Crystal, while you're trying to figure out your mic, I'll read Everest's question or feedback. How often when we use stories and games to teach, students do not learn the game and stories. Students do learn the stories and games, but at times miss the concept behind the game. How does one seamlessly navigate around this?
Yeah, I think I talked about that. How do we incorporate games in such a way that the game elements and mechanics do not overshadow the curriculum? Because that can easily happen, you know, where it's all about the games and then the learning aspect is put aside. So that's why it's important to have a very clear learning objective that a teacher has to ensure that by the end of the lesson, the students have achieved what they intended to achieve at the end of the lesson. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Marianne agrees with you as well. She says the game design is key. The game design is key, and the intended outcomes built into the game mechanics also is the focus. Okay, yes, the question, are the intended learning outcomes built into the game mechanics also is the focus content, knowledge, or skill? So those are some of the things to consider when choosing the games or how you implement or use that in class.
Yeah.
I have one question. I'm sure we are close to the end of today's session, but one question before we go is we know game-based learning and its potential in the classroom, but as much as we want to hand kids and students control, we still see that for some of the constraints we mentioned around time and all of that, teachers are still teachers want to retain control, and games can basically open up exploration that they really cannot tell how the class will evolve. Again, this is a broader problem, but when using such an exciting tool in the classroom, how have you managed that, and what recommendation do you have for teachers who are still careful about utilizing such a tool in their classroom or adding this to their toolkit?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Wow. So one thing I've done is having clear rules. You know, just reading the rules clearly to the students. Set expectations from the beginning of the lesson. You know, what is expected of them, their behaviors and everything. Let's just make it clear for the students so that during the them involved working with the games, they don't what can I say? They don't go beyond the objectives of the lesson. So just setting clear rules and expectations at the beginning of the lesson can really be helpful to the teacher.
Awesome, thank you. So what I hear is the learning objective is still at the center of all of the activity, the game at any point does not replace that. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. Of course, it takes being intentional, organizing and planning effectively, and then coordinating and setting clear rules are some of the things that we need to consider as we integrate and use game-based learning or gamification with PhET teams in our classroom. I will let you take a final word now. We've come to the end of today's session. As always, we almost never have enough time. So please feel free to join the community on Facebook to continue the conversation or ask questions. Myself and other members of the team will be there to take your questions. But final word before we close.
Okay. Maybe something that I want to share with everyone is that, like I've said, this is still a new area. So many things that we are yet to discover about the potential of games in the learning process. So it's still a learning journey for me and for most educators. And yeah, just also being in this forum has been really insightful for me. And I can't just wait to read some of the comments and the feedback and the reflections that teachers have shared on this platform. I'm truly, truly thankful for allowing me to just share the knowledge, the little knowledge, I would say, that I have from my experience with game-based learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lilian. It was a pleasure having you on the show. So as we close, I'll just leave us with this thought. If students are not learning the way we teach, then perhaps it's important now to flip it over and teach the way they learn. So I'll advise that we, at the least, try some of these tools out and see how we can transform our class to become fun and, of course, ensure lots of learning is taking place. We've come to the end of today's show, not today's show now, today's session. Thank you for such an interesting conversation. We hope that you join us again next month. Thanks again for joining us this evening. Bye for now. Can we remain behind a bit? Yes, Sam wants to remain behind. Yes, we are happy to stay back, but we've come to the end of the session. So please feel free. This recording is going to stop now. So I'm going to hit the stop recording button.